Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Podcast powered by First National. I'm Aaron. He's Adam, recording live here at the Toronto Real Estate Forum Day 2. I'd like to thank Glass Lake Funding for sponsoring this episode. And of course, thanks to the Forum for having us here. Our guest today is Lachlan MacQuarrie, Industry Fellow of Intelligent Buildings. Lachlan, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you very much, both of you.
So this is a cool conversation, a little bit, again, with real estate adjacent, but very important and very involved. And if you own real estate, I think this is a conversation you'll find very useful. It's an aspect of the industry that I wouldn't say gets overlooked. It's growing in importance, growing in value, growing in significance as far as decision making, at the ownership level. Before we go there, Lachlan, I want to just talk about your career, where you started, how you ended up kind of being an industry fellow at.
And what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, thank you. I'll start with I'm a maritimer in economic exile in Ontario. So I have joined the ranks of real estate through an undergraduate in engineering and a master's in urban planning, and I went right into a real estate acquisitions role. So I worked for a private investment firm and bought commercial real estate, predominantly strip centers, office buildings, industrial buildings, in the U.S. from Washington to Florida, but based here at Toronto. And went with that for about 3 or 4 years, and then went in an MBA at Western. Briefly did a stint in strategy consulting for Accenture, and then went and moved into development and asset management for a firm called Giffords, which morphed into IGRI, and I did 11 years at Oxford Properties, where I was the global head of platform services before being the SVP at Epic Investments. Overseeing property management and real estate management and their national programs. And then most recently, in the past 18 months, working with Intelligent Buildings, focused on optimizing the use of technology in institutional real estate and mitigating cybersecurity risk associated with operations. So quite a varied, varied background.
Also, all sort of in around operations and building management.
All in that space. I've had the roles of VP of Asset Manager. I've had the roles of Director of Acquisitions. I've had the roles of construction. So I've had a very broad base, ranging, and which is really helpful in operations roles when you have come from an investment background, come from an asset management background, and you spend much of your time focusing on how to use the attributes of those things successfully.
Are you one of the East Coasters that can live in Toronto for 25 years and still consider to be just temporarily here? Is that?
Well, I think I'm grounded now in Toronto, but I do spend lots of time in the East Coast. I have a home in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, and so I do regularly go back. And I'm hopeful that I can convince my wife to let me retire there eventually.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you.
So Aaron kind of alluded to the work that you do growing rapidly in importance. I'm sure that it comes with more capital allocation from investors, but it still is in a growth stage. So can you describe the difference from 5 years ago to current in terms of the seat at the table this kind of offering we get?
I would say that technology in real estate's been around for 50 years, to be candid. What's evolved in the past 20 years is an understanding that technology that operates within our buildings doesn't have to be considered uniquely a snowflake for every single asset. And we can use technology to drive experiences, resilience, efficiency, and operational success, including tenant engagement and efficiency when we manage it like we manage other assets. And so technology has been around for a long time, but with the advent of the internet and data and cloud computing, we've had way more access to information. And in many cases, institutional owners and real estate operators have not used that information successfully. And it's not because they didn't want to be efficient. Candidly, our profession is not driven off of technology historically. We're very much a physical world. And when we started to embrace data and start thinking about how we could use information to improve the quality of our buildings and our operations, we were much more successful. And so organizations that have been able to see that and embrace what technology and what artificial intelligence can do for real estate have been very successful in driving down costs and improving the experience for customers, in simplifying the lives of operational teams to run their buildings. And so that's transformational, but it's not one which every organization has embraced just yet.
It's funny, a bit of a tangent, but this is a theme, not necessarily as it relates to technology, but one of the big obstacles we have as an industry at large, I'm talking about the commercial real estate industry, is that very few organizations have the scale and sophistication to sort of make those leaps and those investments, right? We're so, there's a lot of small private offices that are very successful, but they own 10 buildings, and it's difficult to justify the investment. Or what do you, I'm looking for a comment. What do you think about that?
I would say, your categorization of it as an investment is true in the sense of, and it's investment in your time. But investment in technology, you've already invested enormous amounts of money into your building and technology. The investment is really into approaching and using that technology in a way that is accretive to your business. And so that's the investment you're asking for. 10 years ago, the focus was on the evolution of prop tech. So really, small organizations saw a problem and said, I can do that better. So if the VTSs of the world evolved and said, I can solve and make a leasing process faster, quicker, more efficient, and automated with scale to allow you to be much more successful and rapid in solving a leasing problem. And that's an amazing technology. You don't have to invest a lot to use technology today. You have to invest in people and time and understanding more than anything.
So I guess the argument is more that you've already spent a lot. This is more of an add-on. This is just a accent more than it is a fresh new investment.
Let's just go down this rabbit hole a little bit, Lachlan, if you allow, just getting the ROI for those guys, getting them to understand the ROI, I think at times is complicated.
Absolutely. And when you talk the language of value creation as opposed to technology, you get the eyebrows kind of peak a bit, and people will say, okay, now it's interesting, tell me more about that. And what you'll realize quickly are that in many cases we've invested technology in a very inefficient way in our building. So you might take a building automation system, a lighting control system, security access system. They're all operating their own networks historically that are running their systems on it. There's no reason why, and sophisticated organizations have converged these networks, reduced the requirement for vendors to actually operate the head end, and we can now standardize the use of technology, control the access of that, and start to access it in a much more efficient way. So there actually are ways to create savings from simplification as opposed to further capital investment.
Yeah.
And it's about doing more with what you already have, and then embracing the risk that comes with technology in a scalable way. You don't have to solve the world. You can start small and tackle risk in a way that is appropriate.
I think some of it feels complicated.
There's a notion of complicated and complex, right? And so the notion is that something can be complicated or complex, meaning you don't control something, or something it's hard to do. Just because it's hard to do and you don't have an education around it doesn't mean
you don't understand it.
You don't understand it.
It seems different.
It seems different.
It's not broke, let's not fix it, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, like in the same way that the kids in the world today that struggle with math say, I can't do math. The answer is I don't understand it yet.
Yet, yeah. The power of yet.
Power of yet.
Yeah.
Well, probably as well a tougher sales pitch when real estate had an incredible 20-year tailwind and said, well, why do we need to change? We're making money. But maybe more relevant today when trying to find that edge is a little tougher, trying to find that additional ROI is a little tougher. Is it an easier sales pitch now to people to say, hey, yeah, your building's probably not giving you the yield you wanted, but here's the small investments you can make with a definable ROI that would enhance it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you talk about, for instance, cybersecurity and the risk associated with technology and data breaches, and it's more about risk and risk appetite. And so risk is what you don't control and what can happen to you. Risk appetite is how comfortable you are with dealing with that risk. And so I think the challenge is when you talk about value creation for real estate, particularly in the space of technology, are that if you don't understand it properly, and you don't understand where it creates value, then you're more inclined not to invest or not to address it. That doesn't mean you're not exposed to it. It means you don't understand it yet. And so in many cases, our job at Intelligent Buildings is to help educate and extract understanding of what people are trying to do, and then help them through that solution.
Maybe we should jump into
Using
that.
like change management.
So it's absolutely change management.
So maybe we should jump into that then. The type of, let's just pretend you're speaking to Aaron and I, a couple of building owners. We've not spent a lot of time on this. What's the low-hanging fruit? What's the risks that you're addressing? What is some of the catastrophic outcomes people have had for not paying attention to it? There's horror stories that must help frame it correctly, right?
Yeah, there are, and so we don't tend to use fear as the sales technique, but
it's useful at times.
But at times it's useful. It's interesting because every building is a series of computers and data points and sensors and devices, and what people don't understand is that in many cases they don't know what they have, and so in many cases they don't know all the sensors in place. They don't know when they were patched last. They don't know if there's vulnerabilities attached to them. They don't know who is accessing their networks. It can be as simple as, does your vendor have a password that says admin 123, and he just passes that on to his friend when he's away on vacation, says, hey, can you run the system for me and remote into the BAS to make sure the heating's properly configured? I'm away on vacation. And so there's a number of people that are coming into their buildings. They're unregulated. The systems that are being run by vendors are not always being backed up. They're not patched. And in some cases, it's a technology problem. So you're operating a system off of an antiquated computer or a platform that's no longer supported. In other cases, you can actually walk into a shopping mall, plug into a port, and control the PA system. And so when I worked at Oxford Properties, one of the big deals that I negotiated with the retail team was a digital media platform with Cineplex. And my boss at the time, Andrew McCowan, and really my mentor, pulled me aside one day and said, in a very English accent, which I won't repeat, my biggest fear, Lachlan, is that in the middle of Yorkdale Shopping Center, we're going to have pornography on a screen at Christmas. I'm going to trust you that you can work with the right technology and the mitigations to alleviate my concerns.
And it's the anti-porn strategy.
Unfortunately, it's something that's actually happened to organizations.
Oh yeah.
And there've been events. I mean, the bigger events that you'll find in technology is that someone has gone in and remotely accessed in, and usually it's a people failure. Someone's reached out, there's an email you've clicked on, or you've plugged in a USB key, and ultimately you've invited someone into your network. They've had access to the backgrounds. They can port into a variety of different sources of information, and they're there unknown. And they're unknown for months.
Yeah.
And then they extract what they want.
Yeah, and we should, and we'll get there next. I think the difference between IT and OT, because you made that distinction before we went live. I'll just as an anecdote, our CFO, we're a financial institution, and our CFO gets over 800 spam emails a day.
Right.
That our cybersecurity team and our information security team has to filter and remove, so only the stuff that's actually real gets to his desk. And we have anti-spam campaigns and all sorts of cybersecurity campaigns and all the stuff that's to protect ourselves against these things, because it's a real business. Like, there are bad actors constantly trying to find ways into systems.
Yeah.
On an IT side, and maybe this now convert to the OT side.
Well,
what is that?
The parallel is that the OT side is not managed properly.
Yeah.
So,
what is OT? Maybe just start
OT
there.
is operational technology. So technology that has been designed to run or do something specifically. So an operating technology example would be a lighting control system. How is a building security access managed? The building automation system, the Wi-Fi in a building. So technology that is meant to help run and support the operations of a building. And it's not the same as a network that's running your mail servers and software systems that your institutional IT team develops and runs. And so you have corporate IT people who are running systems and programs and platforms that are supported by a vast IT environment, training and patching and standards. And then you move into the world of commercial real estate and institutional real estate, and what you find is, although there are elements of standards that exist, every system is a little snowflake. And so when you have that disparaging difference across the technologies, you can't just bring an IT person in and help them run a building. The elevator is meant to go up and down constantly, do the same thing over and over and over. And if it doesn't do that properly, then you have a problem. And so when you when you look at the IT element versus the building system operations, they don't even speak the same language. And so when you invite that circumstance to the table, and you have on top of that environment which is driven off economics and returns and yields, OT has been largely ignored from a cyber perspective.
So what? What's the risk to the property owners?
Well, the risk is that someone comes in and controls your space and has a negative impact on your tenant. And so you think about the amount of effort and money and investment in attracting and retaining tenants in a building. If you lose them because they don't trust you, or they're not willing to invest in their space because you're not willing to invest in your technology to support the safe and quiet enjoyment of the building, then you lose income, return, yield. And along the way, you've got operations teams and employees who say, if you can't support the systems that make my job easier, then I'm going to go to somewhere that does. And so you'll lose people, you'll churn experience, and you'll lose institutional knowledge.
I have this vision of Ethan Hawke at Mission Impossible, one of his teammates with a laptop plugging into some physical server in the building to get access to the cameras or whatever, right?
We've literally done that. And in a shopping center in the U.S., a reputable institutional real estate owner, and we literally plugged in to a column in the middle of the shopping center and accessed the PA system.
This is white hat hacking? Is that
This
the
is white
idea?
hat hacking. Yeah.
That's a
You
fun.
said, see?
Yeah.
See?
And then the other thing is we've had clients of ours who were willing to test elements of our platform. So one element might be a zero trust network. So really think of your building as putting a moat around your building, and we can control everyone who comes in and all the information that goes out. So if you can control the front door, then when someone comes in and violates that through a breach, you can actually prevent the breach from extending out back into the environment and causing the problem. And so if you do zero trust, you can actually solve a lot of your problems. We were further doing some work with them on vulnerability and patching, so we can actually scan the networks constantly, devices, and looking for vulnerabilities and examples where someone has breached something, and we instantly found something. It actually shut down their system briefly. We prevented the breach from reaching back out to the environment to doing what it was supposed to do, which is share information to a foreign country. We involved the FBI, we involved the property teams, and we literally fixed the problem in about 8 hours. And if you hadn't known that was happening, or hadn't had an environment that would have prevented that, you could have seen an enormous amount of economic damage that you may not have realized immediately, but it could have happened over time.
So what's the main area right now that building owners are paying attention to and improving? Where's the big focus right now where the industry is seeing some, level up the game in terms of managing that risk?
Well, they're coming. Institutional owners are coming to the table, and they're asking the right questions, and they're asking for standards and guidance. And so there's a group out of the U.S. that was originally through Realcomm and IBCOM called the Real Estate Cyber Consortium. So a series of institutional landlords came together and said, we should probably set some standards, some frameworks, some minimum expectations that our building systems should function under. And so in many cases, landlords today are saying, I need to know about cybersecurity. So they're stepping up to the table to learn about it. They're just not necessarily launching and investing in the systems to do it just yet. And so the starting point is often a conversation around the convergence of knowledge from the IT folks and the OT folks, and teaching them about what the art of the possible looks like. And then, really spending some time with your operations team to inventory your systems, to identify where there's gaps in terms of capabilities. And so lots of organizations are asking the right questions. And in many cases, the more sophisticated ones are actually doing something with it. So lots of questions being asked, lots of education, lots of awareness.
So the services that you guys are offering is effectively diagnostics plus a solution?
Yeah, we diagnostics is one of the solutions we would offer. We offer a managed service. So we actually had talked for years about what we think you needed to do and how you need to do it. And eventually our customer said to us, well, why don't you do that for us? And so we've morphed our services into a managed service environment where we can actually deliver that result with your team. And so in the same way you would have a contract with a cleaning company or a security company, you can have a contract with Intelligent Buildings to develop and manage your managed services around cybersecurity.
So it becomes like a subscription basis almost.
Absolutely, and it's a dial a program. It can be one service. It can be all 6 services of ours. It can be anything in between.
What scale do you need for this to make sense?
You don't need to have a big scale. I mean, realistically, our clients in general, we look for people who have portfolios, 10 buildings or more. But realistically, anyone that has a system, a network, a decent amount of square footage. So if you took an office building, if you were sort of 100,000 feet and above, you probably have the systems in place that would mandate reasonably some scale attached to it. When you convert it to a cost per foot, I'm going to call that it's insignificant. And I would often refer to that in some of our sales conversations with, you'll spend more on Christmas decorations in the lobby than you'll spend with us mitigating the risk that your governance and your board would like to know about.
In terms of asset classes and the type of systems in them, is there certain asset classes that have more vulnerabilities, more issues than others? And I just ask that because a large part of our listeners would be apartment owners, but I'd love to hear.
There's also, apartment is the largest asset class, right? So how does that fit into your world?
The risk profile.
Yeah, well, I'll say that the multifamily space is certainly a space that could benefit from this, but the reality of that is that in many cases, multifamily assets don't have centrally delivered technology elements, so they don't necessarily have a central BAS that runs all the heating systems of the apartments. They don't necessarily have common area Wi-Fi attached to both the users and the visitors. They may not have a converged network that runs access control systems in the doors. So multifamily is a space that is evolving as the technology in multifamily evolves.
I would say just a lot of the new builds will have a lot of the stuff that you just mentioned.
A lot of the new builds. If you
Keyless
have
entry.
keyless entry, I mean, that's a sweet spot where you have technology.
The Internet of Things, right? Like there's a lot more of that sort of connectivity now.
Absolutely, and where you'll find the more likely opportunities are in the office sector, in the enclosed mall retail sector, to a lesser extent in industrial. Industrial is going to have less common area, but yet large scale industrial, particularly multis, are going to have rooftop units, heating new systems, and increasingly they're connected to the internet in some way. So if it's connected to the internet, you're exposed to risk.
We're in a rapidly changing environment. Like the pace of tech enhancement is just getting into warp speed now. So normally I'd ask somebody kind of what they think on the 5 to 10 year vision, but you could almost bring that down to a 2-year vision right now for how different things will be. But what do you see on the horizon? The cutting edge of either new risks presenting themselves or a new way of handling it.
New risks.
New risks. Here,
let me put one out there. Like robotics is coming fast and furious. Presume we're gonna. We already do have robots cleaning
cleaners.
floors and things, but I think it's gonna, expand. That obviously fits into your world of major sort of security risk.
Yeah. Well, I think the risk associated with
Terminator scenario is that?
I've been part of a team that has launched robotic cleaning in shopping centers before. So unmanned, unstaffed cleaning devices, cleaning and washing the floors. They could run into you. Yeah.
Well, someone could take that over and use it to break in, or I don't know, right?
I think the bigger risk coming down the pipeline is associated with how future generations of real estate operators understand and operate buildings in light of artificial intelligence. And increasingly, the new generation is learning to take information from a black box and largely accept it and use it, not necessarily without the knowledge of whether it's accurate or correct. And so in many cases, when you look at very successful buildings today, they're run with an operations staff, many of whom have more gray hair than I do. And these are folks that know how to run and operate real estate properly. The next generation of that has less mechanical training, relies much more heavily on technology and data, which is an excellent opportunity for efficiency. But at the same time, how do we know they're using the information correctly? How do we know they're getting accurate information? How do we get them to think for themselves in the future? So there's a risk associated with the evolution of technology, particularly in the AI world. My wife's a lawyer, and they use a technology application similar to ChatGPT, but increasingly, her concern is whether or not the information that she receives is actually accurate and factual. in my world and in the broader world of real estate, we're looking for more general information. But increasingly, as kids come out of university and colleges and polytechnics, and they're relying on technology, do they have the understanding how to use it properly? Can they fall back on core knowledge of how operations and buildings should operate, not just how the AI tells them to operate? It's a risk.
Yeah. We have analysts work at First National, and often we're asking them to analyze. Like, still need to analyze.
Think.
Right? Yeah.
Think. Yes.
Well, and AI still has the aberrations, just when it gets something completely wrong, hands and images would be the obvious one. You get the 7-finger hands, and that shows up in written answers as well.
Yeah.
So, it'll go away, I'm sure, rapidly, but currently you do get some radically wrong answers out of AI. It's strange. We are out of time. For anybody who's listening to the background noise here, you can probably hear the chimes going off, the next session going. And I know Lachlan does have his panel coming up where I'm sure he'll reiterate a lot of the points he made here, but the listeners can get it via this method. We want to thank, of course, Glass Lake Funding for sponsoring this speaker video series. The Canadian Real Estate Forums are hosting us at our favorite event of the year, Toronto Real Estate Forum. Most of all, though, Lachlan, thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you both.